Hey guys, so today's video is on the leadership shift that separates operators from executives. So now let's look at the problem. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know I'm really focused on problem solving, and that's part of this video today. So just looking at the problem when it comes to these operators versus executives. The problem is that operators, they pretty much react. They push through effort, hustle, and force. And what they normally have their mindset based on is if it's not broken, don't fix it. But the problem is it is broken. Because one of the things I always say to people all the time is you can do this, but at what cost? The cost to your energy, to your sanity, to your relationships, and to your self-preservation. There are no barriers, there are no boundaries, there are no borders. And so you become everything to everyone. You do things the way you do it because that's the only way you know how to do it. But the problem with that is there is a ceiling because your effort is finite. No matter how hard you push, you can only push so far. Gone are the days where we really focus on redlining ourselves to the detriment of our own health. We must be better than that. We must start to understand that the body can only produce so much without a detriment to you, your soul, your sanity, and your relationships. And so it's really about just understanding that part of the problem we have here as the operator is focusing on an identity. Because they've done things a certain way, they believe that's the way they do it. You see, people adapt, whether rightly or wrongly. Think about this. Whenever you ever seen somebody who smokes, and the very first time they smoke, they gag because it's a shock to the system. Now look at that person 3 months' time, and they're smoking like a pro. It's just normal for them. And the same example could be used for somebody who drinks alcohol. How many times have you seen somebody laughed at them the first time they drink alcohol and they gag and they almost throw up? Because again, it's a shock to the system. Find that person in 3 months and they're drinking it down like it's nothing, like it's water. My point on that is that the body adapts to anything, right or wrong. And so you operators that are redlining and are used to this wired state, you think this is normal. It's not normal, it's just common. So this itself is the problem. The identity is attached to that way of feeling and thus that way of being. And so now when we diagnose this, what I want you to understand first of all is it's not really about your skill. This is not what increases your productivity and your ability to scale your business. It's not about your skill. It is about your state. The identity shift is your state. Shifting your state into something that has reserves. That basically means separating yourself as an operator, which is reacting, to becoming an executive, which is someone who's calm, regulated, intuitive and receptive. Someone who leads from their state, not from their reaction. Once you shift and you regulate your body, you actually lead from a regulated state, which means you can process information far more efficiently because you take the time to feel into the decision. Does it feel right in your body? Does it feel right in your mind? Or is it just a reactive impulse because you are trained into a state of reactivity? And so the difference, as you see, the operator reacts to deadlines, reacts to demands of the marketplace, whereas the executive is regulated and fine-tunes their nervous system to feel into if something is right, if scaling is the right thing to do. Two different methods, the same situation, a completely different operating system. One is reactive, the operator, and one is regulated, the executive. That in itself makes the difference. And so the question then becomes, well, how? How do I actually become this type of person? And what we're talking about here is the methodology. This is where I talk about architecture and rebuilding the operating system that drives performance. And the way we do that is we look at be, do, have. And if you've watched any of my videos before, I always talk about this. Most people have this as an inverse way. They have only because they do, and they're never present to be. Only when they accumulate all the wealth, only when they're able to output more than anyone else, only when they're absolutely accomplished everything, only then do they think about being present and celebrating. This is the wrong way to do it. Because when you do it that way, you are obsessed with outcome, and there's always another mountain to conquer. And so your nervous system gets tired into the accomplishment, into the doing. You cannot change when your nervous system is fine-tuned and fixated on a certain state of being. It's not about the mind, it's about the body. If you're wired into a certain sensation, you will always seek that sensation. This is why, or one of the reasons why, people are addicted. It's not their mindset, it's their body impulse. Hopefully that makes sense to you. And so what we want to do, as I said, move into the be, do, and have. Now you may say, okay, well, what does that look like? Be is fully present. If you've ever seen a child in the moment, they are only relative to that absolute moment. If you play with a child for an hour, don't play with that child for an hour. The child will just totally focus on the fact that you're not playing with them right now and totally forget about the fact that you played with them 2 hours ago because they're fully in the moment. So as a business leader, as a founder, one of the things we have to do is focus on being. When you are fully present in the moment, you can actually work properly because you are in the moment, not thinking about the task in an hour, but focusing on the task right now. When you're fully present, you devote energy to that situation and only that situation. You are far more calm in that situation. You can actually process and be receptive enough to receive downloads and insights to actually conquer or create solutions for that particular situation. So being fully present isn't just about that. It's actually doing daily practices that allow you to slow your heart rate down, regulate your nervous system, such as Tai Chi, Qigong, breath work, journaling, stretching, all of these things, grounding exercises, quantum resets as I call them, that allow you to shift into the alpha brainwave state. So if you've not watched one of my videos before, I'll quickly define the differences. Beta, that brainwave state is 13 to 30 hertz. That's how fast the brain is moving. That is a state that we normally go into when it comes to problem solving, when it comes to, not so much problem solving, but when it comes to activities or doing things. That's the beta brainwave state. It's an execution state. It's the state you have to go into to execute. But when you, as an executive, move into an operator mindset, you are reacting, and that is high beta, that is impulse, that is reactivity, that is stress. And most operators are in that brainwave state, so it's high beta, very stressed, very fragmented, very hard to find solutions because it's a stress state. Versus alpha, which is 8 to 12, so it's slower. This is the gateway state. It is so important. It's relaxation, recuperation, intuition, creativity, problem solving. The way you do that is slow your heart rate down. As you slow your heart rate down, your nervous system goes into the parasympathetic branch, which is rest and recovery, rather than the sympathetic branch of the nervous system, which is reactivity. So again, it's about that state. Once you can get yourself down into alpha and problem solve better, what you're actually doing is you're changing your state. And then as you do that more often, your identity relates to your feeling state. And so when you get to the point of being wired and fried and fragmented, that becomes unknown or foreign because you've trained your nervous system to be, which is self-related and regulated, a slower heart rate zone, parasympathetic, more rest, more recovery, talking slower, being more present. And then that translates to having better relationships, especially with your spouse or your loved one and your children. Your identity now becomes that state of being because you train it to become that normality. And then, therefore, what you're doing is you're increasing leadership capacity because you have more reserves, because you're not redlining all the time. You are far more calm, more harmonious, better to be around. Now, isn't that a win for everyone? So that's the methodology. It's shifting from beta to the alpha, shifting from doing to being. And then the final part of this is the outcome, the actual outcome that happens from this is you move more into the executive identity rather than the operator activity or identity. And remembering, the executive identity is calm. And from that place, you can scale because now you're scaling from stability. When you are more stable in your nervous system, you can actually hold more. So think about this. It no longer becomes effort. You're no longer the person that has to manage everything. I want you to really hear this. You are no longer the person that has to manage everything. You now become the person that can hold everything. There's a completely different energetic relationship there. Managing everything is more like imagining someone who's just holding 7 spinning wheels, constantly moving from one to the next to the next. They're managing everything, but at what cost? Versus holding everything. You have such a greater leadership capacity that you can hold more. And when you can hold more from that place, you can do more. And when you can do more from that place of fully being present, you can then attain or have more. This is what separates coaching from architecture. Coaching itself is motivation and advice. Architecture. This is where we now look at rebuilding the operating system that drives performance. This is how we scale. And the shift is very small. It's just going from a regulated state, going from a reactive state to a regulated state. If you want to know where you are physiologically, because it's really about not what you think you are, but what you physically are, physiologically are. If you want to know where you are on the stress scale, download my leadership state diagnostic, which is in the comment section at the bottom. When you download that, you're able to do a quick quiz. It literally takes you 1 to 2 minutes to fill out, and it will let you know and give you the feedback as to whether or not you're regulated or reactive. Until next time, guys, stay healthy, happy, whole, stay regulated at all times.